Hi, my name is Philip Ingpak, and this is for the class Information Science 2000. This week we're covering knowledge diagramming. There are many other examples of knowledge diagrams aside from the topic I'm going to be covering, which is mind maps. They include various forms of other maps, trees, and charts. However, this one I personally use and I wanted to cover because it's something that I take note of every single day, and I'm sure that you will all find it helpful as well. I do have a little bit of an aid pulled up. It's the Wikipedia article for mind maps. And so the best way to get familiar with mind maps is to actually see it visually. So no point explaining too much about what a mind map is before you just take a look at one and then figure out it a little bit for yourself first. So going on to an online example, I found this man named Sheng Huang who shows how he creates his mind maps using Notability. You can see on his diagram, he starts off with a square, and this could be any sort of shape, but it's what helps him. And it's either a to-do list, as in the example on the top left, where he shows, well, he has 3 things to do today, and he has just juts and lines sparkling out from that to-do to just keep himself organized and make sure, well, these are 3 separate topics, but they're all things that I need to do today. As well as another key diagram where on the bottom he has something called mental notes, and it's just things that he has in his mind where, I have agenda 1 that springs to topic 1, and topic 1 springs to these other topics that are also related to topic 1 that come from agenda 1, and those are all things that he wants to keep in the back of his mind. Maybe they're not on his urgent to-do list, but it's just another way to keep his brain organized to make sure he doesn't forget. Perhaps if he ever wants to show this to somebody else, then, well, they'll know exactly what he's thinking. So, from Wikipedia, now that you understand a little bit more about how another person uses a mind map, it's a diagram used to visually organize information into a hierarchy, showing relationships among pieces of a whole. And exactly with what we saw on Sheng Huang's mental notes, you can see that he goes from agenda to topic 1, to whatever else topic 1 entails, and agenda 2 to whatever else agenda 2 entails. And so that's the hierarchy, everything leading back to his big agenda items. Moving on with the wiki, it explains that the major ideas are connected directly to the central concept, and other ideas branch out from those major ideas. And mind maps can be drawn by hand, either as notes or for a planning session with higher quality pictures when more time is available. So this sounds very similar to many other forms of diagramming, but it's just one that's a little bit more loose, freeform, and one that I personally use. So let's just take a look at how I do my mind maps, and then we'll talk about how I came up with it and how it helps me organize my information in my daily life. So this comes from my own notes on Apple, and it looks almost like a to-do list, but this is the type of style that I like. And I've been keeping mind mapping notes since probably freshman year of college, which was about 4 years ago. So in high school, I always did agendas, and that would just be a to-do list of 5 things to do per day. But what I often found with to-do lists was that they weren't exactly structured. You would have to-dos for perhaps math, to-dos for science, to-dos for biology, to-dos for, all sorts of different classes, but they'd all just be in a jumbled list and not organized. And so I would often jump from subject to subject and get whiplash from needing to context switch so often, from just checking off, okay, this is the first to do, this is the second to do. But my own mind mapping list now follows a more of a structured approach, and it is organized by 1, hierarchy, 2, concepts of the relationships between each of those hierarchies, and categories. So you can see on the top of my mind mapping, I have something called campaign. This is kind of just a reference to a video game. It doesn't really mean too much, but it just means the campaign is the main story / what I want to most accomplish. Then I have another category called tonight's goals. That one I create every single morning or the night before, and I just create a little bit of a list of things that I want to accomplish for that day. The next is side quests. This is another, once again, note odd, like a nod to video games where these things are not necessarily at the top of my hierarchy, but something that I need to get done eventually. And then I have all of my classes, and each of them have their own title for, one for information science, one for development, one for statistics. And they all follow the same type of structure where they give me some sense of impending deadlines and what I need to do to accomplish them and things that are similar and related to that class. So if we take a look at web development on my personal example, it gives me information about when the class occurs, which days, and where the class occurs, as well as some assignment that I need to complete. And underneath that assignment goes, what do I need to do within that assignment? So assignment 3 is due February 20th. There's a hypertext link to the Google Doc that shows the project requirements. And then there's underneath that a sub-bullet point that says implied returns, because that's something that I need to research and look into in order to complete assignment 3. And that has another hypertext link to some article explaining what implied returns are, or perhaps how I can find out more about it. And underneath web development, this is not a subcategory of assignment 3, but rather it goes back to the hierarchy for the category web development, is to email Jose about an on-site interview that I have. And so that is still related to web development because it's something I need to do for that class, but it's not necessarily connected to assignment 3. It's connected to web development, and assignment 3 is connected to web development, and that's all connected to these side quests that I have. Now that I think about it, I should probably move my Northeastern classes outside of side quests and back into campaign, because classes are important. But aside from that, let's take a look at some of the benefits from mind mapping. Well, this is just a simple Google search, but I can tell you about what I get out of it. And that's organization and making sure that I have all the information I need at one place. So whenever there's a flow of consciousness that I have, or some sort of task or goal, or perhaps something that I don't want to forget, I put it into my mind mapping notes, and I make sure that there's a due date, so it's actionable, and I make sure that it's some sort of thought that I had that I need to get done, or perhaps something that I don't want to forget. Maybe it's an idea for an app, or maybe it's something that I need to remind myself to buy, like flowers on Mother's Day. And it really does help break down complex tasks into easier ones. For example, if I have something like assignment 3, and assignment 3 requires X, Y, and Z knowledge, then I already know X, but I need to find out more about Y and Z. And so it really just helps me retain all that information and make sure that every single time I look at something, I don't get that whiplash that I was talking about when I need to think about, well, what do I need to accomplish? It helps me organize my thoughts and boosts my memory about like which things I've already accomplished and what needs to get done. So the Google search says many of the same things that I just did. It improves creativity, improves learning and understanding of complex subjects. It simplifies the complex ideas, like I have just said. It helps you retain information. Presentations, I'm not sure what that means. Learning, I'm sure it helps with learning too. Recall effortlessly. I think this is one of the most important parts of mind mapping, that it's something personal for you and something that you should create and check daily, so you make sure that anything that you had with an important thought doesn't get lost, right? That's often a problem. You think of something great and then you forget it, and you might think of it again, but you might not. Now worry not, because you can just put it on your mind map and you'll improve your productivity by having it there. Moving on, let's talk about how to start mind mapping. You see that there are many different outlets for how to mind map. The example I showed earlier with the YouTube video guy, Sheng, he uses Notability. So he draws it on his iPad and he creates a mind map and he says that he uses it every single day. For me, I use Apple Notes. I have it sort of a to-do list type of schedule, but it's still my mind map. And externally, you can use Lucid Chart. So this might be more of a traditional mind map you might see if you pull up like Google Images of what a mind map is, where there's a central dialog box and everything extends out from there. That central dialog box could just be for the day. It could be for some sort of topic. Maybe your goal is to get into X company or perhaps secure X co-op. And this mind map should have all of the tools, resources, and thoughts, and perhaps interview questions, perhaps things to do that you think are crucial to accomplish getting into company X. And each of them would radiate out from that central box. So how does Lucid Chart factor into this? Well, it's a really easy software to use, and it gives you all the tools you need, which is creating boxes, as well as creating lines, and writing text, and that's all you need. And these mind maps can be shared between other users, as well as cloud saved, so you have it always. So I'd highly recommend Lucid Chart. I would highly recommend doing what I do with Apple Notes, and I would also highly recommend using Notability, like what Chen does. And worst case comes to worst, you use pencil and paper, and then you can put it up on your wall, and perhaps that'll be your way of mind mapping. Either way, I would highly recommend, and it's probably one of the best knowledge diagramming tools that I can think of.